Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. So last year I went to a comic book store when they had a big sale and they had tons of 50-cent books and they were doing like, buy four, get the fifth free. And I just bought pretty much one of each of everything in the 50-cent bin because it was when I was just getting into comics and I was getting excited about supporting a comic book store. And I ended up with a backlog that I've been slowly working through all year. And a lot of it's cringy or offers a little to talk about, but maybe not enough for a video. But this was something I always knew there was going to be something interesting about this, given all the talk about Bleeding Cool and criticism of some of its coverage of Comicsgate. My original title for this was going to be something like Adventures in Fake News. I don't think I'm quite ready to throw the fake news label on this, but it's definitely trite news, and that's a problem of the whole thing. And it also has a problem. I, since this is written articles, I actually got out my highlighter and went into feminist art book critique mode to make sure I wouldn't get too lost. But one of the general problems of the articles in this is high word count, low idea count. Uh, I talk about economy of language in comics, use as few words as possible to convey the idea. In children's books, you need as few words as possible because all that space is premium space. This would have benefited, I think, from losing about 8 pages and trimming the heck out of some of these articles. So let's take a peek. I'll talk about maybe 2 or 3 articles, and then I'm just going to skip over the stuff that doesn't interest me. So it's our boy, Rich Johnson. Not really our boy, but I came in with kind of low expectations, and the whole introduction is pretty much Rich Johnson selling the idea of being a gossip columnist for comics and why he thinks that role is needed. And it kind of comes off as he's trying to convince himself that this whole endeavor is worth doing. And it also, throughout the magazine, there's plenty of kind of teehee millennial humor. We're going from digital to print, baby. We've downloaded this onto reconstituted wood. No people shouting first. Hell, you can even get me to sign it. And that's just not something you're going to want me to do on the back of your iPad. All right. So it's lighthearted in tone, I guess, but it's simultaneously lighthearted and edgy because of the nature of the gossip he wants to gossip about. I've heard Zach talk about the fight on the floor of New York Comic Con, and I don't know what the heck happened, but Rich Johnson mentions it here, but doesn't give any details about it. I guess I'm already getting hooked into the juicy detail gossip of this. The thing about gossip columns is I understand the appeal of a gossip column. You're reading about people you're interested in and some of the behind the scenes stuff that they normally wouldn't talk about in public, but the reason that gossip columnists have a bad name is that it's the most not relevant type of journalism. I don't care what the Kardashians are up to. I if I heard some person made a joke. Oh, it was those goofy YouTube ads that are always popping up. Yeah, one of Huang's students made that. Gosh, I'm doing free advertising for him, but one of Huang's students made that app to block Kim Kardashian news. If that worked, I definitely want that because I don't care about the lives of celebrity people. The only sex or gossipy stuff I'm interested in hearing about is stuff that was significant to world history, like Alexander Hamilton's sexual affairs are relevant to world history. So that's the kind of thing I'm interested about. I don't care about what's going on in the comic book scene, but it offers us some things to talk about because this is pre-Harvey Weinstein era. This is 2012. So, as far as Rich Johnson is concerned, the reason that the comics industry needs a gossip columnist is it helps the spread of the industry information beyond the PG gated communities, and by printing it, lets the fans know what the pros are thinking about. All right, so he's justifying kind of the gossip column role by saying, well, we're bringing the information to the masses, but they're really just kind of hinting at oh, this so and so sleeping with so and so, or this happened. Marvel had an adultery clue, or some major company had an adultery cruise. That's the problem. They're always very vague. Marvel banned couches to stop interns from seeing each other. These were just dumb, like little dumb snippets as news articles. This one you could summarize as Stan Lee did not have an affair, so a story did not happen. Uh, and scams on Kickstarter could hurt Kickstarter. Thank you. This one was at least vaguely interesting that a person at Marvel banned couches so the employees wouldn't sleep with each other. That's a vaguely interesting piece of gossip. Uh, okay, so I wrote at the top of this pre Harvey Weinstein, and I think it would be unfair to Rich Johnston to say that he is flippant about sex in the workplace, but I can tell this was written pre Harvey Weinstein because this tone of writing would never fly after 2016 and the Hollywood scandals and everybody pretty much knowing that these Hollywood bigwigs were essentially sexual predators. After Harvey Weinstein, everyone is much more cautious and circumspect about how they talk about sex in the workplace. But I said Rich Johnson isn't flippant, but he sure as heck is kind of light and airy about the topic of sexual politics in the workplace and stuff that, according to a lot of radical feminists, should be categorized as rape culture. So this is pre-rape culture becoming a popular idea beyond just little feminist circles. So at the offices, they were sexing their way through menial staffers before featuring them as comic characters as a sort of memento. Tee hee. So wait, there you go. So after Harvey Weinstein, this is rape culture. This is the great moral problem of our age. Hashtag Me Too. We must fight this. Pre Harvey Weinstein, the left had kind of a cutesy, tee hee, nudge nudge, wink wink attitude about loose sexuality. You sleep with whoever, they sleep with whoever. Go out and have a few drinks and sleep with whoever. And that was when I was growing up, it was the religious right that were the sexual prudes. I remember in high school reading kind of like the every question for teens about sex for Christians books, and you wouldn't really talk about sex much outside of that. One of my high school teachers assigned us a Christian book where one of the chapters was "Sex is not a dirty word," essentially critiquing that aspect of red state Christian culture and kind of arguing that it's okay to talk about sex. You don't have to treat it like a dirty word. Sex is appropriate. Sex is moral in the confines of marriage. So it's okay to talk about it, right? So 80s and 90s, the religious right are kind of the no sex types, and the left are the advocates of sexual promiscuity is okay. It's just sex. It doesn't hurt anybody. Now, after Harvey Weinstein, it's like the script is flipped a bit, and the left are now recognizing strict rules governing sex. And in colleges, it's nuts. I'm so glad I didn't date anybody at my progressive school because I don't think I could have navigated all the new rules they want for sex. You need consent continuously. You need enthusiastic consent for sex. Do you need consent for every button as you're unbuttoning the shirt? It's kind of insane. And this was just a little bit of a time capsule reminding me of a different time where for the left, this kind of sex in the workplace, boss, secretary stuff was viewed as juicy gossip, and it wasn't viewed as their hashtag of the month and their moral cause to all get behind. So whatever. I do not care about Valiant. I feel a little bad because I really like the owner of my comic book shop, and he is a Valiant geek. That's his number one thing he's always recommending, and I just can't make myself interested in this. So we're just gonna skip over this. Hot Comics by Rich Johnson. I think the only thing I highlighted in this was a weird tee-hee joke. So people, they don't like things like surprise killing Captain America. Remember when it was a joke that killing Captain America would be ridiculous? Nowadays we just turn him into a Nazi. But anything new is an unknown. Quantity is an unknown quantity and ordered as conservatively as Rick Perry's underwear. Tee hee, Rick Perry, am I right? Ran for president in 2012. Oops. Something conservative anyway. But should comic book so he goes on to talk about the tendency of people to buy indie books like Walking Dead, wait for them to sell out, and then flip it for a massive profit. So speculation. And he asks, should comic book speculation be encouraged? Well, in the bad old days, comic book speculation was based on the gimmicky fake news number one covers, and today speculation is driven by content. Okay, I agree with the substance of that point. If you're going to buy a comic, preferably it should be that you actually like the contents of the comic and not just the goofy stuff in the cover. I was going to go on a tangent about Hayek and booms and busts and the comic book inflation, the comic book speculation, bubble bursting, but I'm going to control that tangent and move on. This is the article I really didn't like in terms of length. So you see I wrote less words, more ideas, defining the boom generation. So Rich Johnston's talking about the company boom as a whole, and he'll go on give several examples of types of comics they're doing. And my problem with this article is the first few pages could be summed up as Boom's new. They had the Disney license. They make comics for kids. They make comics for grown-ups too. But then take that and stretch it. This article could have been condensed quite a bit. So I was never a journalist student, but I was a photographer for the school newspaper, and I would occasionally write an article. So even though I didn't learn like all the formal conventions of journalism, I did have a little on-the-job training and advice from the actual journalism students. And so I may have my terminology wrong, but start with your lead, start with the most interesting thing, give some supporting points for that. So the interesting thing is Boom's maybe an up-and-coming little scrappy underdog company. That's the angle on the human interest story. The other angle, you could easily have made this story about how weird Boom is and how they don't have any focus. It could be a negative piece on saying Boom makes edgy comics for adults, it makes cutesy comics for kids, it doesn't have a corporate identity, and that'd be the negative angle. The positive angle is, yippee, Boom's doing good. They have fun comics for kids. They have fun comics for adults. Yay, 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 go, go, Boom. Do you see the distinction between that? That's the angle on the story. And then the raw data is just Boom exists, Boom owns the Disney license, Boom makes Adventure Time comics, Boom makes Planet of the Apes comics. So you need your raw data, you need an interesting spin on it, so it's just not a bunch of robotic points, and the angle's okay. So this isn't fake news. I get that it's kind of building up Boom and saying, you go Boom, you're doing so swell, but it's way too much verbiage for a story that is so basic. So Boom lost the Disney license and bought up Charles Schulz. Okay, here it's our boy Mark Waid. So I just highlighted this because I was surprised to see his name here. Mark Waid, who is writing a series of revisionist superhero books for Boom, such as Irredeemable and Incorruptible, also became their editor-in-chief. Okay, that's kind of a little interesting point of his history. Oh, I highlighted this because Waid was doing deconstructionist superhero books. And you can do deconstructionist superhero books and then come back and do a fun not deconstructionist superhero book, but it sort of undermines a little bit my faith that Mark Waid will be able to make a kind of honest, all-American, red, white, and blue Captain America story work, because you kind of have to have a little bit of that red-blooded Americanism and not want to deconstruct Captain America and turn him into a Nazi. The Diversity in Comics channel has been reviewing Mark Waid's Captain America comics, and sometimes he's argued that Waid is trying to fix what went wrong with Captain America during the Nazi Cap debacle. And his most recent video, though, is that, well, whoops, it's too early to call it. There's still, SJW Marvel's still alive. Mark Waid is still doing weird political stuff in the Captain America book. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my boy Zach. I'm not interested in Captain America until that ship gets righted. Anyway, I'm going on tangents, guys. Tangents. All right, so here's the point in the article where they start providing lots of examples of different things being written. I thought it was kind of funny that, just as an aside, they mentioned that this guy Sam Humphries outsold Mark Waid 2-1 on his first issue. That was just a little bit of a roast that was just mentioned as a side point during all the discussions. Here I just wrote trim, because here's where it's just getting too long. It's just listing long paragraphs and even blurbs from the companies about all their comics coming out. Make this a piece about Boom. Just have a little brief piece about what Boom is and how they're interesting, and maybe a few points about the kinds of things they're doing. But this is too much. This is giving us all the little previews and snippets about all these titles coming out, and it's too little information to get me interested in what the heck this is, and it's too much information for me to wade through. If you want to do a piece on the Hypernaturals, do a focus piece on the Hypernaturals and why this is cool and why I should go buy it. But don't slam a whole bunch of that I have to slog through. I wrote the comment decent sell on this little indie box because this is C. Spurrier talking about a book that it sounds like it's the type of book I would hate, but he at least does a decent job of selling his book and making it somewhat interesting to me. And I think I just wanted to underscore that this illustrates the importance of trying to convince people to go buy your book. So this is basically a deconstructionist parody of superheroes, parodying the big exclamation, generic exclamation, event exclamation crossovers. And a villain and a hero meet after the apocalypse, and they are given some new strange mission after the aliens have killed everybody. So it's a very generic setup. I've seen the Twilight Zone episodes on that idea. Brother Mine is that idea, and he's taken that idea and made it a superhero and a supervillain. Okay, whatever. But this is good because he leaves me with a question about what the story will be. And even though this is the kind of story I am not that interested in Chip Zdarsky pseudo-ironic exclamation point superhero parodies, but by giving me a little bit of a hook, Cy is doing his job. And if you are roasting the fans on Twitter or insulting the fans or swearing at them, you're not doing your job. So good on you, Cy. This Blue Arrow is another thing where I think this article just should have been revised and completely get the gunk out. Get it out of my magazine. So this Blue Arrow indicates where these two comic artists are mentioned. We go down here, go all the way over here, and here's where the payoff is, where they talk about some of their comics and what they're bringing to Boom, and all of this in between. Oh, one is the spitting image of Wolverine. Cutesy. Anyway. Yeah, so this is way too much gunk to wade through to get to the point that these two comic book artists may bring some of their audience over to Boom Studios. Then they have a few movie reviews. There's this weird out-of-place comment about the whitest Spider-Man, Peter Parker. Haha, he's white? What? I shouldn't go on a tangent about Brave. I have a hard time caring about this. So let's see here. Brian Wood does a good job of selling the idea that he cares about story and characters, but the problem is it just comes across as the interviewer saying, do you care about stories and characters? And Wood says, yeah, I care about stories and characters, all the story, all the character. So this is some environmentalist story about after the apocalypse, the environmentalists are trying to deal with the fact that the world has already ended. We weren't able to stop global warming. Al Gore was right. And if you have a good story, it's possible to make me care about that. But the problem you're fighting against is it sounds like Captain Planet, but less funny than Captain Planet. At least Captain Planet is environmentalist propaganda with some cheesy humor to it. Make the sell. Make the sell that this isn't... This is what I highlighted. So, in the massive, Captain Callum Israel, an environmentalist, stealing the good ship Capital with a K, like Das Kapital. Karl Marx, am I right, guys? Those capitalists, they wrecked the earth. So, there are things signaling here that this is a political book. So, how do you sell a book that has an inherently political premise? Well, you do what Brian Wood does, which is talk about how you're interested in character, you're interested in telling a new story that's a fresh spin on the post-apocalyptic world, but he speaks about it in generalities. So even though he's doing what he's supposed to do to sell it to me, I don't know, he didn't make his sale. Skip over. The Atomica Age by Rich Johnson. Dave Elliott is back. Good hook. I don't even know who Dave Elliott is, but nice and brief. Dave Elliott talks a bit about wanting to do his own comics after working for Marvel and DC so much. I got OCD and I highlighted a few things where I thought Rich Johnson was either using awkward phrasing or was using incorrect punctuation, but I'm not going to dig into that. I don't like this. This is totally not Captain America. It's Major America or something, photo reference drawing. make a new hero or make it transparently obvious that this is a take on Captain America, that you're just not publishing at Marvel. But this is floating in between. Do you want me to think of this as a brand new superhero I'm excited about? Or should I just look at this and say in my mind, Captain America, even if they call him Colonel Texas or something? This really interested me. Shifty Look, Namco Bandai commissioned a bunch of artists to do comics based on video game properties that were not that popular in the United States, and they wanted to develop, and they released them for free. So this magazine was published in 2012. Who knows if the website is still up? But I like this. This some good colors, some kind of interesting use of shape and abstract shape. Yeah, it's free. I'll go check it out. What the heck? So, shiftylook.com. I won't talk about the comics because it'd be boring to talk about the summary of the summary of the summary of comics. I'll go read it myself and see if I can find anything interesting to talk about. I do not care about Before Watchmen. If you read Before Watchmen and liked it, and you can tell me why I should care about it, go ahead. But I like my boy Rorschach, but I just don't care about this stuff. And I didn't care about this because pretty much there is no hope, there are no heroes, no one is coming to save you. Okay, well, that's for some people, but it's just not for me, so I don't care. All right, so that was the sort of roasting of Bleeding Cool. Not quite fake news, but kind of trite, and should have stuck to digital in my opinion. Anyway, I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I'm about as whatever on this as I am about the actual Bleeding Cool site, but I love you guys, and I'll catch you later.